The shadow betrayal and the rise of justice. There is a silence that only Scorpio can hear. It doesn't echo through words, it doesn't scream like betrayal in the open. No, this betrayal comes dressed in kindness, cloaked in concern, masked with loyalty. But you saw it before a word was ever spoken, you felt it in your chest. The shift, that moment when someone you once trusted, a friend, a lover, even a family member, looked at you the same way. But their energy was foreign. The light in their eyes, flickering, and the warmth you once felt, gone. You didn't imagine it, Scorpio, because the most powerful lie anyone can tell you is the one that gaslights your intuition. But here's what they didn't count on: your silence was never surrender, it was observation. Your stillness wasn't weakness, it was awakening. And now the truth is coming forward, not in pieces, but like a rising flood. You weren't just betrayed by accident, you were targeted. But not by a physical enemy. This was spiritual. It began the moment you started rising. The moment your energy no longer fit inside the limited mold others placed on you. The moment you stopped shrinking to make others feel comfortable. That's when it happened. Someone you allowed into your sacred space. Someone you trusted with your loyalty, your vulnerability. Did the unthinkable. They opened the door. Not just metaphorically, energetically, and when they did, they invited the shadow in. A presence, an energetic assassin, not one that stabs with knives, but with silence, with guilt, with withdrawal. The kind of betrayal that doesn't bleed, but leaves a wound that never stops echoing. But listen to me now, Scorpio, this is not your punishment, this is your soul's turning point. Because while they thought they were breaking you, the universe was preparing to build you back as something unshakable. You are not here by accident. You are here because spiritual justice has begun. The karmic wheel has turned. And what was hidden is about to be revealed. And this time, you will not question what you feel. You will not second-guess the knowing in your bones. You will not doubt your power again, not after this. So before we begin, take a breath. Place your hand on your heart, and if you feel it stirring, if your soul is already whispering yes, then type in the comments below, I am ready to reclaim what was taken. Because what was stolen from you was never love, it was clarity. It was peace, it was power. And now, Scorpio, you're about to take it all back. Let's begin. Part 1, the betrayal that blade. It didn't start with an argument, there was no loud voice, no slammed door. No betrayal note left behind. No, this betrayal was much colder, much quieter. It came wrapped in casual conversation. It came in the form of "Are you okay?" from someone who had already started pulling away. It came in the form of a familiar voice, now hollow, a gaze that used to see you, now distant. A presence that once felt like home, now cold, unfamiliar, calculated. Scorpio, this is the betrayal that cuts deeper than any physical wound. Because it doesn't bleed, it infects, it lingers. And worst of all, it makes you doubt you. You begin questioning your intuition. You ask yourself, am I overreacting? Maybe I'm imagining this shift. Maybe I am too sensitive. But deep down, a voice is screaming, and that voice is not wounded, it's wise. Because here's the truth, you didn't imagine it, the betrayal was real, but it didn't need a knife. It used your heart as the entry point. That person you let in, they didn't attack you, they did something far more damaging, they withdrew. Subtly, slowly, strategically, they stopped laughing like they used to, they stopped sharing like they once did. Their affection became transactional, their concern performative, but Scorpio, you didn't need them to confess. You already knew because you don't read people's words. You read their energy, and what you felt was absence. An empty seat in a room where someone was still physically sitting. You see, your power is not in confrontation, it's in perception. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, not the surface, but the underworld. You are the zodiac's detective. You don't just see lies, you see the space where truth should be, and when the person you trusted most became a ghost in their own body. You recognized it instantly, but instead of reacting, you did what Scorpios always do. You went inward, you watched, you waited. You examined every moment, every memory, searching for where it shifted. And in that silence, in that sacred isolation, you began to unravel, not because you were weak, but because the betrayal didn't just come from them. It echoed through every wound you've carried in silence for years. This is the Scorpio paradox. You love with intensity. You commit at the soul level, you merge. And when someone breaks that sacred bond, it doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like a spiritual assassination. But here's what you may not have realized until now. The person who betrayed you, they never had the power to destroy you. They simply found the key you gave them freely and used it to exit quietly. They didn't slam the door, they left it ajar. So you'd always wonder if they might come back. So you'd keep your soul hanging in suspense, waiting for closure that was never coming. And that, Scorpio, is the cruelty they hoped you'd never call out, because your silence was interpreted as surrender. Your introspection was mistaken for weakness. But oh, what they forgot is that you are never idle. Your silence is not a pause, it's preparation, a stillness that births transformation. You were not falling apart, you were burning away the illusion. And now you see it clearly. They didn't betray your love. They betrayed your trust in who they pretended to be. The betrayal wasn't a moment, it was a pattern, a quiet erosion. An energetic withdrawal so precise. It felt like it had a purpose, and maybe it did, maybe, just maybe. This was the moment your soul had been preparing for all along. So if you're standing in that silence right now, if you still feel the ghost of that person moving through your memories, if you're still asking why did they change, let me offer you this: they didn't change, you evolved. And they simply couldn't come with you. You outgrew the version of them you once needed. And the universe, in all its divine precision, used their silence to show you that you were the only one truly present all along. Now, Scorpio, ask yourself this: do you still want to stay in a room where your spirit is no longer welcome? Or are you ready to burn that bridge with grace and rise from its ashes, because what comes next isn't about them. It's about you and the version of you that remembers exactly who you are. Part 2, the door you left unlocked. They didn't break in, Scorpio. They didn't force their way into your soul. They didn't have to, because you, with all your beautiful, burning loyalty, opened the door for them. You see, when a Scorpio loves, it's not casual, it's not conditional, it's not convenient, it's cosmic. You don't just let someone into your life. You hand them the blueprint of your heart. You give them a key forged from memory, made sacred by trust. You give them access to the one place no one else is allowed to enter, your inner sanctum. And so when they violated that trust, they didn't just betray your feelings. They desecrated a temple. But here's what makes it even harder. They didn't storm through the threshold like a villain in the night. No, they smiled, they loved, they said all the right things, they earned your loyalty. And then, they let the shadow in. They invited chaos into the very space you thought was safe. Not by shouting, not by confessing, but by leaving the door wide open and walking away. And when they did, the cold crept in. Not all at once, but like a draft you couldn't locate, a discomfort you couldn't explain, an invisible chill that made you question your own sensitivity. And still, Scorpio, you stayed, because you are the one who waits. You are the one who gives second chances in silence. You are the one who says, maybe they didn't mean to. You are the one who convinces yourself that loyalty means staying, even when it hurts. But here is the hard truth. The person who opened the door to your undoing was the one holding the key you gave them. That's not weakness. That's not shameful. That is love misunderstood. You believed in their potential. You saw their pain and wanted to be the one who stayed. You thought, if I hold space long enough, they'll heal, they'll return, they'll finally see me. But they didn't see you. They saw your energy as fuel. They saw your loyalty as obedience. They saw your silence as permission. And because of that, they didn't just let the darkness in. They taught it the layout of your spirit. They gave it a map of your triggers, your weaknesses, your fears. They showed it exactly where to strike. Scorpio, this is not a story of blame. This is a moment of awakening. You didn't fail because you loved. You didn't lose because you trusted. You were simply hoping that someone would treat your soul as sacred. And instead, they used it as shelter, until they no longer needed your light. But here's what they forgot. Scorpio's light is not for rent. It is not a warmth to be borrowed. It is a divine fire. And once you realize who you are, that door they once walked through slams shut with the force of every boundary you were once afraid to enforce. You are not the one who left it open. You are the one who believed love was stronger than fear. And that is still your greatest strength. But now it must also become your greatest wisdom, because not everyone you love is meant to stay. And not everyone you welcome deserves to be there. So if you've been asking yourself why they turned cold, why they slipped away without explanation, why you're left holding the pieces while they move on untouched, let me tell you, you didn't lose them. You lost the illusion they gave you. And that is a sacred release. You see it now, don't you? That the door they walked through was never locked. Because you believed they were safe, you believed they were light, but they were a lesson. And now, you're about to reclaim that key, not to give it to someone else, but to protect the soul it belongs to. Yours, life lesson from part 2. Sometimes the betrayal wasn't that they entered your life, but that they were given access to your soul before they earned it. Love without discernment is not noble. It's self-sacrifice, and your soul was never made to be a proving ground for someone else's healing. Part 3, the assassin's mission. It was never about stealing your heart. It was about corrupting your compass. Scorpio, the person who betrayed you. They weren't just careless, they were calculated, and if not consciously, then spiritually, because their mission was subtle. Not to break you with cruelty, but to dismantle you through doubt. They didn't need to lie loudly. They only needed to twist your truth, to chip away at your certainty, to weaken the foundation of your knowing. And what hurts the most, they used your own gifts against you. They took your intensity and made you believe it was too much. They took your loyalty and made you feel clingy. They took your deep emotional presence and accused you of being dramatic. And slowly, deliberately, they made you second-guess the very core of your nature. But Scorpio, let's get one thing straight. They didn't do this because you were flawed. They did it because they couldn't match your depth. So instead, they tried to shrink it. They whispered just enough contradiction to confuse you. They pulled away just enough to destabilize you. They gave you crumbs of connection, just enough to keep you craving more. And here's the sickest part, they needed you to doubt yourself. Because if you ever truly stood in your full power, they would be irrelevant. Their mission wasn't to destroy you, it was to disarm you. To make you feel crazy for sensing their dishonesty. To make you feel selfish for asking to be met at the same level. To make you believe that love meant enduring constant unease. And they almost succeeded, didn't they? You started pulling back your light. You began withholding your truth. You tried to become smaller, softer, quieter. All to preserve something that was never mutual. all to protect a connection that was never sacred. But here's what they didn't count on. Scorpio doesn't stay small for long. You were never built to fade. You were built to rise from what tries to bury you. So now the veil lifts. You see it for what it was. They weren't just a person. They were a mirror, reflecting back every ounce of self-doubt you hadn't yet healed. And the betrayal, it wasn't that they left. It's that they made you question your own truth. That is the mission of the energetic assassin. Not to kill your body, but to bury your intuition beneath layers of false guilt. But Scorpio, you are the sign of transformation. You are the phoenix. You burn away what no longer serves. And now you've seen too much. You've felt too deeply. You've endured too long. And the flame within you, it's roaring back to life. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't even need closure. Because what they thought was your end was simply your initiation. The assassin may have wounded your faith, but they failed to kill your knowing. And once Scorpio's knowing returns, so does the storm, not a storm of destruction, but of reclamation, of self, of sovereignty, of soul. Life lesson from part 3. The most dangerous betrayal is not when someone lies to you, but when they convince you to stop trusting yourself. Healing begins the moment you remember your truth never needed their permission to be valid. Part 4. When Archangel Michael appears. There comes a moment in every Scorpio's journey where silence is no longer peace. It becomes a prison where the soul, once patient, starts to stir. Where the fire, long held within, begins to crackle against the bones. You reach that moment when you realize you've been carrying the weight of other people's wounds, while your own have been bleeding silently in the dark. And in that stillness, right when you believe no one sees, no one cares, no one will ever come, he appears not as a thunderclap, not as a flashing sword, not as a Hollywood miracle, but as a presence, quiet, grounded, unshakable. Archangel Michael, he does not arrive with vengeance. He is not here to punish those who wronged you. That's not how divine power works. No, his mission is higher. He arrives not to fight for you, but to stand with you, to place one hand on your back and remind you, you were never meant to carry this alone, but you were meant to rise from it. And in his other hand, he doesn't hold a weapon of wrath, he holds the sword of truth. Not to cut others, but to cut cords, to sever every psychic chain that's kept you bound to betrayal, to guilt, to illusions, because what you've been fighting is not just heartbreak, it's not just loss. It's the spiritual paralysis that comes when someone convinces you to dim your light, so theirs can shine brighter, and that's what Archangel Michael has come to destroy. He doesn't come to strike, he comes to free. Free you from the looping thoughts, maybe I was too much. Maybe I should have stayed quiet. Maybe I imagined it all. No, you didn't imagine the betrayal. You didn't imagine the energy shift. You didn't imagine the cold. You simply hoped it would get better. You gave chances. You waited. You forgave. Again and again and again. But now, Scorpio, it's time to forgive yourself for staying too long, for lowering your voice, for handing over your power to someone who never knew how to hold it. Because Archangel Michael doesn't come to prove you were right. He comes to remind you you were always right to trust your knowing. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was sacred. Your solitude wasn't punishment. It was preparation. You were not abandoned. You were being set apart, so that you could finally hear the whisper that says, now rise. Rise from the ashes. Rise from the gaslighting. Rise from the identity they tried to wrap around your soul. Scorpio, this is the moment in your journey where the war ends, not because you won, but because you remembered. There was never a war worth fighting for someone who couldn't meet you in your truth. Let the fire burn it down. The guilt, the shame, the wondering. Archangel Michael has placed the sword in your hands now, and it's time to use it not against others, but against every version of yourself that believed you had to earn love by bleeding. You don't need revenge, you don't need their apology. You need only one thing, the courage to walk away from what was never real and return to what always was, your soul. Life lesson from part 4. Real power is not in retaliation. It's in remembering who you are after someone tried to make you forget. The sword of truth doesn't destroy others, it frees you. Part 5. The karmic contract. Who paid for your betrayal? Scorpio, have you ever asked yourself, why does the pain always come from those I love the most? Why do the deepest wounds always carry the softest voices? The ones who say they care. The ones who call you family. The ones who swore loyalty in the light and opened the door to betrayal in the dark. You see, in the realm of spirit, nothing happens by accident. There are no meaningless betrayals, no random heartbreaks. There are only contracts signed in silence, etched in soul code, and hidden in the folds of time long before you ever took your first breath. That person who broke your heart, the one who made you doubt your very essence. They didn't just show up to hurt you, they showed up to awaken you. Not because they were wise, not because they were worthy, but because on a higher plane your soul agreed, this pain will be the fire that sets me free. It sounds cruel, it feels unbearable. But when you zoom out, when you see the sacred architecture behind your suffering, you realize the betrayal was never about them. It was about you reclaiming a part of yourself you were still hiding. You see, Scorpio, your intensity terrifies people, not because it's dangerous, but because it's pure. You love too deeply for the shallow-hearted. You see too clearly for those who survive by illusion. You bond on a soul level, and that kind of connection demands truth, but not everyone can give you truth. So what do they do instead? They give you control, they shape-shift, they mimic what you want to see, until they can no longer hold the facade. And they collapse beneath the weight of your mirror. And when that happens, the betrayal feels sudden. But the contract, it's ancient. In the records of your soul, there is a line written in sacred ink. I agree to meet a shadow I cannot fix so that I may finally choose myself. That person didn't pay in silver. They didn't offer a bounty. The price was your trust, your silence, your endless empathy. You paid it not out of weakness, but out of hope. Hope that they would rise. Hope that your love would heal them. Hope that loyalty would be enough. But they couldn't hold the light you gave them because they never held their own. And the betrayal, it wasn't personal, it was contractual. They fulfilled their role as the shadow. Now it's time for you to fulfill yours as the light, not to forgive them in words, but to release them in energy, to tear up the contract, to rewrite the agreement, to say, lesson received, cycle complete. Because if you look back, Scorpio, you'll see it wasn't just one person. The pattern repeats, the names change, the costumes change, but the energy, the same. It's always someone who gets close, someone who says all the right things. Someone who cannot bear the brilliance of your soul. So they try to dim it, but the truth is they never hated you. They hated what you reflected. You didn't just see them. You saw their pain, you saw their lies. You saw the child inside them that never healed. And instead of running, you stayed. You loved them through it. You merged, you sacrificed. But Scorpio, at what cost? Because the real betrayal was not what they did to you. It was what you did to yourself to keep them. How many times did you silence your intuition? How many times did you call red flags just a misunderstanding? How many times did you shape-shift just to maintain the bond? That's the contract you didn't even know you signed, but the ink is still fresh. And you, Scorpio, still hold the power to burn it. So ask yourself, do I want to renew this pattern again? Do I want another karmic teacher, or do I want peace? Because the universe will keep sending the test. Until you realize the lesson was never to change them, it was to finally choose you. Life lesson from part 5. The deepest betrayals are often soul contracts in disguise. They don't come to destroy you, they come to end a pattern you've unconsciously protected. You are not the victim of fate, you are the liberator of your lineage. Part 6. When Scorpio remembers who they are. There's a moment. After the betrayal, after the silence, after the karmic dust has settled, where something ancient stirs inside you, not rage, not revenge, something deeper. Something older than pain, older than the betrayal itself. Recognition. Scorpio, for so long you've been looking outward, asking why, who, how, what did I do wrong, but now your gaze turns inward. And for the first time in a long time, you remember you were never too intense. You were just surrounded by people too shallow to hold you. They told you that your depth was a problem, that your emotions were too complicated, that your boundaries were too sharp, that your vision too piercing. But the truth, you didn't scare them, you exposed them, you saw through their performance, you read the space between their words. You felt their energy long before their betrayal became visible, and that frightened them more than any confrontation ever could. Because Scorpio, when you look at someone, you don't just see the surface. You see the truth they haven't dared admit to themselves. And people who live on illusion, they don't survive long under the light of your gaze, so they tried to dim it. They told you that you were difficult, that you were possessive, too sensitive, too suspicious, too demanding, but now you know. You weren't too much, you were just unwilling to live on the surface. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for something real. And in a world built on masks, real love feels like interrogation. You were told to calm down, to lower your expectations, to be chill. But Scorpio, you were not born to be chill. You were born to transform. You were not born to be liked. You were born to be legendary. And for a while, they had you fooled. You shrank. You softened. You tiptoed around their fragility. You blamed yourself for being too intuitive, but that ends today. Because you've remembered the truth, your feelings were never random. Your instincts were never wrong. Your suspicion wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. They made you feel unstable so they wouldn't have to face their instability. They gaslighted your gifts so they wouldn't have to feel small in your presence. But now, Scorpio, you've come back to the mirror, and this time, you're not the one reflecting, you are the mirror. And nothing is more terrifying to those who live in denial than a soul who cannot be lied to. So don't shrink again. Don't question yourself. The world may label your insight as too intense. But the world has always misunderstood prophets. You don't need to explain anymore. You don't need to justify your energy. Because those who are meant to walk with you, they won't be frightened by your truth, they'll be ignited by it. Scorpio, you are not broken, you are volcanic, you are not fragile, you are sacred fire, you are not too much. You are exactly enough for the souls who are ready. Life lesson from part 6. You were never too much, you were simply a mirror in a world terrified of its own reflection. The moment you stop apologizing for your depth, you stop attracting those who fear drowning. Part 7. The Phoenix Protocol. Your power was never lost. There's a sacred moment when the fire stops burning everything around you and starts burning through you. Not to destroy, but to purify. That's the Phoenix moment. And Scorpio, you are the Phoenix, not because you chased revenge, not because you exposed your betrayer, not because you forced justice to unfold in front of the world's eyes, but because you rose quietly and became the justice. Let them wonder where you went. Let them squint into your silence, trying to decode it. Let them feel the absence of your light like a cold draft in the soul, because your silence now. It's no longer confusion, it's sovereignty. They thought they'd watch you break, collapse, beg, apologize for being too much. But what they didn't realize was this: you weren't cracking. You were shedding. You weren't falling apart. You were slipping out of the skin they projected onto you. And now, standing here in the ashes of everything you gave away, you realize something breathtaking: your power was never lost. It was simply buried beneath your willingness to stay small for people who feared their own reflection in you. And now, you're no longer hiding, you're no longer doubting, you're no longer asking the world for permission to be powerful. Because you've activated the Phoenix Protocol, that divine, silent, irreversible process that happens when a Scorpio finally says, "Enough, I won't carry this anymore." And with that declaration, everything begins to change. Not outside you. Within you, you no longer seek closure, because the real closure was always this: you becoming someone they can no longer reach. They don't get to see the rebirth. They don't get front row seats to your evolution. They forfeited that access when they confused your love for weakness. You used to wonder what would happen if they realized what they lost. You used to imagine the apology, the regret, the dramatic return, but now you don't care. Because the real power isn't in being proven right, it's in no longer needing the proof at all. You've transcended their story, and in doing so, you've reclaimed your own. That's what it means to be Scorpio. Not to destroy others, but to become untouchable in your wholeness. Let the world talk, let the past knock, let the memory ache one final time before it disappears into smoke, because you're not who you were when the betrayal happened. You're not even who you were yesterday. You are the Phoenix, not rising with fury, but with quiet dignity, and that is the most terrifying thing to those who underestimated you, because now you carry no anger, no explanation. No attachment, just purpose, clarity, and peace. They thought breaking you would give them power. Instead, it initiated your ascension. Life lesson from Part 7. You don't need revenge to rise, you need release. The Phoenix doesn't scream when it ascends. It simply leaves behind a silence too loud to ignore. Part 8. The final unchaining. You never needed their apology. Scorpio, there is a chain more subtle than guilt, more binding than memories, more paralyzing than fear. It's the chain of waiting, waiting for closure, waiting for justice, waiting for an apology you know will never come, and maybe, just maybe, you've told yourself, if they could just admit what they did, then I could move on, then I could breathe, then I could let go. But here's the truth you already feel in your bones. You never needed their apology. You needed your own permission to heal, because that apology, that recognition, that moment where they finally say, "I see you, I hurt you, I was wrong." It's not coming, not because the pain wasn't real, not because your worth is invisible, but because some souls aren't capable of accountability. Some people live their whole lives denying the pain they caused, because to face it would mean facing who they've become. And so they rewrite history, they gaslight the past, they deflect, dismiss, or disappear. But you, Scorpio, you've always remembered, you carried the weight, you replayed every word. You broke it apart in the middle of the night looking for where you went wrong, but you didn't go wrong, you went deep, and they couldn't follow. So now the question is not, will they ever say sorry? The question is, do I want to remain bound to someone who can't even face the truth? Scorpio, the final chain isn't about them. It's about what you're still holding on to. The hope, the narrative, the image of what could have been if they had just done better. But you're not healing to rewrite the past. You're healing to reclaim your future. This isn't about erasing the memory, it's about releasing the weight, because the truth is, their silence was the apology. Their absence was the answer. Their inability to repair the connection was the closure. And now, you get to set yourself free. You get to stop checking your phone. You get to stop rewriting that last conversation in your head. You get to stop hoping they'll grow a conscience in the middle of the night. You get to walk forward, unapologetically, without needing them to unlock the door. It's because you hold the key, and you always did. Scorpio, this is the moment where the chain breaks. Not with noise, not with revenge, but with a breath. A soft, sacred breath that whispers, "I don't need anything from you anymore, I have me, and that is enough." That's the power of a soul who no longer needs validation to be at peace. That's the power of a Scorpio who has faced the fire and came out not looking for justice, but carrying it. Life lesson from part 8. Waiting for an apology keeps you in the prison of someone else's denial. Freedom begins the moment you stop needing them to fix what they never had the courage to face. Part 9. The coronation of a phoenix soul. Scorpio, look around you now. There's no more smoke, no more fire, no more silence that cuts like a blade. Only stillness, but not the stillness of despair. The stillness of arrival. Because you've made it through the betrayal, through the disorientation, through the dark night of the soul where you questioned everything, even yourself, and yet here you are, still standing, still breathing, still burning, but this time not with pain. With presence. This is your coronation, not the kind that comes with applause, not one declared by others, but the kind whispered by the universe. In sacred silence. You are no longer just the survivor, you are the sovereign. You walked through the flames. Not because you had something to prove, but because your soul knew you were meant to rise from this, not to return to who you were, but to become who you've always been underneath it all. The betrayal didn't break you, it uncovered you, all those pieces they tried to bury. Your sensitivity, your vision, your fire, your knowing. They didn't die, they just went underground. Waiting, gathering strength, becoming sacred embers. And now, you are ablaze again, not out of rage, but out of clarity. You now know you don't need to be understood, you don't need to be forgiven. You don't need to be invited back into the rooms you outgrew. Your healing is the crown. Your peace is the throne, your presence is the empire. So what happens next? Everything. Because Scorpio, when the phoenix rises, the world feels it. The people who thought they silenced you, they'll feel your energy from miles away. They'll wonder why their name no longer echoes in your heart. They'll realize that they were never your weakness, they were your trigger for transformation. You are no longer tied to karma. You are a channel for grace. You are no longer waiting. You are creating. You are no longer hoping they see your worth. You are embodying it. And the universe, it never forgot you. It was watching, holding, preparing, and now in this moment, it bows to you, because not everyone who walks through fire keeps their gentleness. Not everyone who gets betrayed keeps their heart open. Not everyone who is left in the dark continues to choose light. But you did. So this is your coronation, Scorpio. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And nothing in this world is more powerful than a soul who has seen the depths and still chooses to love. Breathe now, not as someone seeking healing, but as someone who has become the healing. You are not who you used to be. And that is the miracle. You are no longer in pain. You are the proof that it's possible to rise. Life lesson from part 9. The phoenix is not honored because it burned. It is crowned because it rose without bitterness. Your transformation is not for them to witness. It is for you to wear. Final invitation, share your light, Scorpio. If you've made it to the end of this journey, then let me say this from the deepest part of my spirit. You are not alone. You never were. And now you are no longer carrying this story in silence. So if your soul felt seen, heard, or healed in any way, I invite you to leave a sacred trace of your presence below. Comment these words: "The phoenix has risen." Not for me, not for the algorithm, but as a sign to the universe. That you are ready to stand in your light again, that you have remembered your power, that the chains have been broken. And if you feel called, share your story. No names, no shame. Just your truth, because your truth may be the lantern someone else is silently praying for in their own dark night. And Scorpio, if this message spoke to something ancient inside you, I invite you to subscribe to this space. This is not just a channel, it's a sanctuary, a mirror, a compass for the soul. Here we do not fear the shadows, we learn to walk through them together. More journeys await, more truth, more transformation, but for now, stand tall. Breathe deep and carry this knowing you are sacred, you are powerful, and you are forever divinely protected. Thank you for being here, Phoenix Soul. Until next time. Walk gently but never small. If this message touched something sacred inside you, if it helped you reclaim a part of your soul you thought was lost, then this space, the path to Buddhist wisdom, was always meant for you. Here, we don't just talk about signs and stars. We explore the depths, we confront the shadows, we rise in silence, and we remember who we are together. So if your spirit feels called, I invite you to hit subscribe below, not as a casual viewer, but as a soul ready to walk the path. A path of wisdom, of truth, of unshakable power. This isn't just astrology, it's awakening, it's remembrance. It's Scorpio rising, not for the world to see, but for your soul to finally breathe. Subscribe now to the path to Buddhist wisdom. And let's walk this sacred journey, one soul rebirth at a time.